The crimson light of Zetria's twin suns filtered through the ancient crystal spires of the Eternal Tower, casting prismatic shadows across Alastria's chambers. She stood motionless before the ornate mirror, hardly recognizing the figure staring back at her. The traditional matrimonial attire of the Aram noble house, layers of iridescent fabric that seemed to capture starlight itself, felt like chains weighing her down. Tomorrow, she would be bound to a stranger in a marriage she never wanted. Alastria's slender fingers traced the luminescent markings on her forearm, her blood sigil, the rare genetic marker that made her so valuable to her family. So valuable that they would trade her like currency to secure their failing dynasty. Lady Alastria, a soft voice called from the doorway. It was Nelia, her most trusted handmaiden. Your parents request your presence for the final ritual preparations. Alastria closed her eyes, feeling the familiar surge of frustration and helplessness. Tell them I'll be there shortly. When Nelia departed, Alastria waited a few moments before slipping out of her chambers. She had no intention of attending another ritual that would further seal her fate. Instead, she navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the family estate, passing through halls adorned with artifacts from 100 worlds. Once, these treasures had filled her with wonder and dreams of exploration. Now, they only reminded her of the vastness she would never experience. As she rounded a corner near her father's private chambers, voices drifted through the partially open door. She paused, recognizing her father's authoritative tone. The alliance is essential, Elara, he was saying to her mother. The Olean Empire grows stronger each cycle. Without this marriage, our house will fall, and with it, our position on the council. But to give Alastria to one of them, her mother replied, disgust evident in her voice. A human, Tarek, of all species. Alastria froze. A human? The primitive species from the distant blue planet? She had expected to be married off to a Gord noble, or perhaps even a Kelvari prince. But a human? The Earthers have resources we need, her father continued, and they've managed to secure a tentative alliance with the Olean. This marriage will position us favorably with both powers. Besides, the prophecy specifically mentions prophecies and ancient texts, her mother scoffed. You risk our daughter's future on dusty legends. Alastria moved away silently, her mind reeling. Humans were known throughout the galaxy as ambitious but technologically inferior. They had only achieved interstellar travel within the last century, yet they were already entangled in galactic politics. And now, one of them would be her husband. The following morning, the Eternal Tower, Zetria's most sacred edifice and symbol of aristocratic power, glowed with ceremonial lights. Thousands of witnesses filled the grand hall, representing noble houses, trading federations, and diplomatic envoys from across the galaxy. The wedding of an Aram daughter with a blood sigil was a significant political event, regardless of who the groom might be. Alastria was led to the ceremonial platform, her heart pounding beneath her elaborate attire. The ancestral chamber's ceiling displayed a perfect replica of Zetria's night sky, stars shifting in accordance with ancient patterns. At the center of the platform stood the bonding altar, where her blood would be symbolically joined with that of her husband. And then she saw him. The human stood tall, though still shorter than many Zetrian nobles. His skin was pale compared to the iridescent blue undertones of her people. He wore a formal attire that attempted to blend Earth and Zetrian styles, black with silver accents that complemented the ceremonial environment. His eyes, a startling blue against his complexion, met hers with what appeared to be equal apprehension. This was Ethan, the human diplomat who would become her husband. As she approached, whispers rippled through the assembly. Many had never seen a human in person, and certainly not one about to marry into one of Zetria's oldest bloodlines. The ceremonial officiant, an ancient Zetrian with skin that had faded to almost translucent, raised his arms to begin the rites. Today, we witness the binding of bloodlines, the merging of worlds, the officiant intoned. Alastria of House Aram, bearer of the sacred sigil, joins with Ethan of Earth, representative of the Third Alliance of Solar Nations. Alastria stood rigidly as the ceremony proceeded, refusing to look at the human beside her. In her peripheral vision, she could see him shift uncomfortably. Good, she thought. He should feel as trapped as she did. The officiant approached with the ceremonial blade, a crystalline knife that would draw a small amount of blood from each of them to be mixed in the ancient chalice. It was at this moment that everything changed. A deafening explosion rocked the tower's foundation. The crystal ceiling spiderwebbed with cracks, shards raining down upon the screaming guests. Red emergency lights flashed as security protocols activated. Through the smoke and chaos, Alastria saw figures in dark attire swarming into the hall. "Down!" Ethan suddenly shouted, grabbing her arm and pulling her away from the altar just as an energy blast scorched the spot where they had been standing. "What are you doing?" she demanded, wrenching her arm away. "Saving your life," he replied tensely, eyes scanning the room. "Those aren't just terrorists, they're targeting you specifically." Before she could respond, another explosion sent them both diving behind an overturned ceremonial table. The attackers were methodically cutting through security forces, moving toward the altar with single-minded determination. "We need to move," Ethan said urgently. "Is there another way out?" Alastria hesitated. She didn't trust this human, but she recognized the insignia on the attackers' uniforms. The cult of Shera, extremists who opposed any contamination of Zetrian bloodlines. They wouldn't just stop the wedding. They would kill her for nearly participating in it. This way, she finally decided, lifting a section of decorative flooring to reveal a narrow passage. The Eternal Tower is built on ancient foundations. These passages connect to the underground network. They slipped into the passage as blaster fire intensified above them. The ceremonial lighting had failed, leaving only emergency beacons to illuminate their way. Alastria moved with confidence through the twisting corridors, her knowledge of the ancient architecture guiding them. "You seem to know these passages well," Ethan observed as they descended deeper. "I spent my childhood exploring them when I was supposed to be studying diplomatic protocols," she replied curtly. "Why would Earth send you for this marriage? Are you some important political figure?" Ethan gave a short, humorless laugh. "Hardly. I'm an engineer and diplomatic liaison. I design communication systems for cross-species use. I was convenient. Convenient. Earth's government needed someone expendable but still technically qualified to represent them," he explained, his voice tinged with bitterness. "I opposed some of their policies regarding extraterrestrial relations. This assignment was their way of removing me from those discussions while still appearing to honor the agreement with your people." Alastria processed this information silently. So he was a political pawn too. A distant rumble shook dust from the passage ceiling. "They're using sonic charges," she said. "They'll bring down the whole tower to find us. Can we reach the surface? Contact either of our governments. The closest exit leads to the lower markets, but we'd be exposed." She paused at a junction, considering. "There's a communications hub in the eastern quarter, but it's—" Her words were cut short as a section of wall exploded inward. 3 masked figures emerged from the debris, weapons drawn. Attire of lower city workers, with Ethan's features partially obscured by a breathing apparatus common among species sensitive to Zetria's atmosphere. As night fell on the city, they found temporary shelter in an abandoned processing facility. Alastria carefully cleaned and sealed Ethan's wound using the medical supplies. "Why did you protect me back there?" she asked as she worked. "You could have used me as a distraction to escape." Ethan winced as the healing compound sealed his wound. "That's not who I am. Besides, we're technically still engaged," he added with a hint of grim humor. Alastria didn't smile. This marriage was never meant to happen. It's a political transaction, nothing more. "I know," he agreed. "But whatever political games our leaders are playing, those attackers are a threat to both of us now. We need to work together to survive this." Their conversation was interrupted by a soft noise at the facility's entrance. Both tensed, ready for another attack, but instead, a small group of hooded figures entered cautiously. "We mean no harm," said their leader, lowering his hood to reveal the weathered face of a Zetrian male. "I am Lennox, former royal guard to House Aram." Alastria recognized him immediately. "Captain Lennox? You disappeared 3 cycles ago after the purge of the council." "I chose exile rather than serve corrupt masters," Lennox replied. "Now I lead what remains of the resistance against both the aristocracy's excesses and the cult of Shera's extremism." He studied them both carefully. "Your escape has accelerated their plans. The cult believes the joining of your blood sigil with foreign DNA will trigger the awakening of the extinction gate." "The what?" Ethan asked. "An ancient device," Alastria explained, recalling forbidden texts she had read in her family's archives. "Legend says it was created by Zetria's original inhabitants as a final defense mechanism. If activated, it could destabilize the planet's core." "Not legend," Lennox corrected grimly. "Reality. The cult has discovered its location beneath the old drifting city. They believe that preventing your union will save Zetria from destruction, but they misinterpret the ancient texts. They don't want to just stop the wedding. They want your blood sigil to activate the gate themselves." "Why would they want to destroy their own planet?" Ethan asked. "They believe destruction is preferable to what they see as contamination," one of Lennox's companions explained. "And they believe they can control the gate to purge only the unworthy while preserving their chosen few." "We need to contact Earth's fleet or the Olean peacekeepers," Ethan suggested. "With enough firepower." "Communication systems across the city have been compromised," Lennox interrupted. "The cult has allies in high positions. But there's an old transmission station in the drifting city that might still function. If we can reach it, we might call for help." "The drifting city is where they're looking for the extinction gate," Alastria pointed out. "It's too dangerous." "It's also where we might find answers," Lennox countered, "about why your blood sigil is so important to them, and why they fear it's joining with human DNA." With few alternatives, they agreed to Lennox's plan. Rest was brief and uneasy, with watches rotated among the resistance members. During her shift, Alastria found herself studying Ethan as he slept fitfully, his features illuminated by the dim emergency lighting. For a human, he had shown remarkable courage and adaptability. Perhaps the stories of human inferiority were exaggerated. When morning came, though in the lower city true daylight never penetrated, they set out for the ancient transportation hub that would take them to the drifting city. The journey was tense, navigating through sectors controlled by various factions, some hostile to Lennox's resistance. Along the way, Ethan and Alastria found themselves walking side by side, apart from the others. "If we survive this," Ethan said quietly, "what will you do?" "Return to your family." Alastria considered the question. "I don't know. This incident has exposed rifts and secrets I can't ignore. My family was willing to sacrifice me for political gain without telling me the true stakes." She glanced at him. "And you?" "Back to Earth to face your superior's disappointment. Probably court-martialed for diplomatic failure," he said with a wry smile. "Though I suppose surviving an assassination attempt by religious extremists might earn some leniency." Despite everything, Alastria found herself smiling slightly. There was something disarmingly honest about this human that contrasted sharply with the calculated diplomatic speak she had been raised with. The transportation hub was a marvel of ancient engineering. Massive anti-gravity platforms designed to carry vehicles between Zetria's surface cities and the drifting city, which hovered perpetually in the lower atmosphere. Most were non-functional after centuries of neglect, but Lennox's team had maintained one platform in secret. "The journey will take approximately 2 hours," Lennox explained as they boarded the platform. "The drifting city has been abandoned for generations, officially because of atmospheric instability, but really because the aristocracy feared the ancient technology they couldn't control." As the platform ascended through layers of Zetria's atmosphere, the landscape below transformed from urban sprawl to barren wastelands, eventually giving way to swirling clouds. Finally, emerging through a dense layer of purplish mist, the drifting city came into view. Unlike the crystalline architecture of modern Zetrian cities, The drifting city was built of dark metallic materials that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Massive engines, still functional after millennia, kept it suspended in perpetual flight. Its structures were angular and imposing, designed for a civilization far different from the current Zetrians. "It's beautiful," Ethan murmured, his engineer's mind clearly appreciating the technical achievement. Their platform docked at an ancient terminal, the mechanisms groaning but functional. As they disembarked, the eerie silence of the abandoned city enveloped them. Water dripped from corroded pipes, and occasionally structures would shift and creak as the city adjusted its position in the air currents. "The transmission station is in the central tower," Lennox directed. "And according to ancient maps, the extinction gate is housed in the understructure beneath the central plaza." They moved cautiously through the decaying streets. Alastria felt a strange resonance with her surroundings, as if the blood sigil in her veins recognized this place. The marking on her arm pulsed faintly with bioluminescence, something it had never done before. "Your sigil is responding to the city's technology," Lennox observed. "The ancient texts speak of this. The original Zetrians engineered certain bloodlines to interface with their systems." "So I'm what, a genetic key?" Alastria asked, disturbed by the implication. "More than that," Lennox replied. "You're a direct descendant of those who built this city. Your blood carries their legacy." They had nearly reached the central tower when disaster struck. A precision energy blast destroyed a nearby structure, sending debris crashing down around them. From multiple directions, cult soldiers emerged, weapons trained on the group. "Scatter," Lennox commanded. His resistance fighters immediately deployed smoke canisters and defensive measures, creating chaos. In the confusion, Alastria felt someone grab her arm. "Ethan." "This way," he urged, pulling her toward a narrow side passage as energy blasts scorched the ground where they had stood. They fled through the ancient corridors, the sounds of battle echoing behind them. A sudden tremor shook the city, nearly throwing them off their feet. "What was that?" Ethan gasped as they regained their balance. The city's stabilizers must be failing, Alastria realized, or the cult is already attempting to access the gate. They found themselves in a vast chamber filled with ancient technology, consoles and interfaces designed for beings with different proportions than current Zetrians. At the center was a cylindrical device that pulsed with faint energy. "It's a data archive," Alastria said, approaching it cautiously. Her blood sigil glowed brighter in proximity to the device. Without conscious thought, she placed her marked arm against the cylinder's surface. Immediately, the device activated, projecting holographic data streams that filled the chamber with swirling light and information. "It's responding to you," Ethan observed, watching in amazement as the alien text flowed around them. Alastria's eyes widened as she began to understand the information. "This is the true history of Zetria and my family." Her voice trembled. "Thousands of years ago, House Aram was a nobility. They were guardians, genetically modified to protect something." She traced patterns in the data. "When off-worlders first came to Zetria, my ancestors made a pact. They would allow controlled access to Zetria's resources in exchange for protection from hostile forces. A protection racket on a planetary scale," Ethan murmured. "The marriage ceremony," Alastria continued, piecing it together. "It wasn't just political. According to this, the final part of the ancient pact required a blood sigil carrier to willingly bond with an off-worlder to confirm the agreement." Her eyes met Ethan's. "That's why human DNA specifically was mentioned. The original pact was with beings similar to humans." Before Ethan could respond, another violent tremor shook the chamber, more powerful than the last. Part of the ceiling collapsed, forcing them to dodge falling debris. "We need to find the transmission station," Ethan insisted. "If the city is becoming unstable, it's too late for that," came a familiar voice from the entrance to the chamber. Alastria turned to see her father, Tarek Aram, flanked by house guards. "The cult has already breached the gate chamber. Soon they'll have what they need." "Father? What are you doing here?" "Trying to salvage what I can from this disaster," Tarek replied coldly. The marriage was supposed to be the solution, reactivating the ancient pact before the cult could interfere. Now we must take more direct measures. You knew, Alastria accused. You knew what my blood sigil was for, what this marriage really meant. You used me. I protected you, her father countered. And our house and our planet. The pact has kept Zetrius safe for millennia. Without it, we're vulnerable to every interstellar power seeking our resources. Safety through subjugation, Ethan said with disgust. Is that really protection? Tarek regarded the human coldly. Your people would have benefited as well. Earth would have gained Zetrian technology, legitimacy among older spacefaring civilizations. Now, that opportunity is lost. Another tremor, stronger still, rocked the city. Alarms began to sound throughout the structure. The gate is becoming active, Tarek said, urgency in his voice. The cult doesn't understand what they're tampering with. They think they can control it, direct its power. They can't. What will happen? Alastria demanded. If fully activated, the gate will destabilize Zetria's core. Not just destruction, total planetary collapse. Ethan stepped forward. There must be a way to stop it. There is, Tarek admitted reluctantly. The same way it was meant to be sealed in the first place. The blood sigil, freely joined with the DNA of an outsider, specifically human DNA, which closely matches that of our ancient allies. Alastria stared at her father, then at Ethan. So through the marriage ceremony wasn't just symbolic. It was functional, genetic key. Yes, Tarek confirmed. And now it must be completed, not for politics, but for survival. Before they could respond, the chamber doorway exploded inward. Cult soldiers swarmed in, led by a tall figure in elaborate ceremonial armor, the High Priest of Shera. The false union will not be completed, the priest declared. The cleansing fire of the gate shall purify Zetria of all foreign corruption. Battle erupted in the chamber. Tarek and his guards engaged the cult forces while Alastria and Ethan took cover behind ancient machinery. The fighting was chaotic, energy weapons discharging in the confined space, illuminating the chamber with flashes of deadly light. We need to reach the gate, Alastria shouted over the noise of combat. It's our only chance to stop this. Ow! Ethan called back. We're trapped here. As if in answer, a section of wall slid open, revealing Lennox and several resistance fighters. This way, he urged. We've secured a path to the lower levels. They slipped away from the battle, descending through narrow maintenance shafts that connected the upper city to its foundations. The tremors were more pronounced here, the entire structure groaning under stress. The city's flight systems are failing, Lennox explained as they hurried through the passages. If it crashes, the impact alone could trigger catastrophic damage to the continental shelf below. They emerged into a vast chamber that seemed to extend infinitely downward, the heart of the drifting city. At its center, suspended over the abyss, was a pulsing structure of metal and crystal that could only be the extinction gate. Cult members surrounded it, conducting some kind of ritual, their chanting echoing throughout the chamber. We're too late, Lennox whispered. They've already begun the activation sequence. Alastria studied the scene, her blood sigil now glowing brilliantly in proximity to the ancient device. No, she said with sudden determination. They've started it, but they can't complete it without me, without my blood. So we keep you away from them, Ethan concluded. No, she corrected. We complete what was supposed to happen. We finish the original protocol, the one that was meant to seal the gate, not open it. Understanding dawned on Ethan's face. The marriage ceremony. Not the ceremony, she clarified. The genetic bonding it symbolized. She held up her marked arm. My blood and yours, combined willingly, should override their forced activation. Lennox looked skeptical. That's a substantial risk. If you're wrong, I know I'm right, Alastria insisted. I could feel it when I accessed the data archive. This is what the sigil was designed for. Another violent tremor emphasized the urgency of their situation. Parts of a chamber were already breaking away, falling into the abyss. Even if you're right, Ethan said, how do we get past them to reach the gate? Lennox unshouldered a heavy pack. With this, he revealed several devices that Alastria recognized as short-range teleportation disruptors, technology usually reserved for elite military units. It won't get you directly to the gate, but close enough to make a run for it. The plan formed quickly. Lennox and his fighters would create a diversion, drawing off as many cult forces as possible. Meanwhile, they would use the disruptors to bypass the outer defense perimeter, getting Alastria and Ethan close enough to reach the gate. As they prepared, Alastria found herself face to face with Ethan. "You understand what I'm asking?" she said quietly. "This isn't the marriage either of us wanted, but it's something more profound. If we do this, our genetic material will be permanently recorded in the gate's protocols." Ethan met her gaze steadily. "Where I come from, we have a saying, for better or worse. I think this qualifies." He offered a small smile. "Besides, how many humans can say they helped save an alien planet?" The plan was executed with precision. As Lennox's team engaged the cult forces in a firefight, Alastria and Ethan activated the disruptors. The technology was disorienting, a sensation of being unmade and remade in an instant. But it worked. They materialized on a maintenance walkway just above the gate chamber floor. The high priest noticed them immediately, his ceremonial mask turning in their direction. "The sigil bearer," he shouted. "Stop them!" But they were already moving, sprinting toward the gate as energy blasts scorched the walkway behind them. The ancient device loomed larger as they approached, its pulsating energy creating a field of distortion around it. "How exactly do we do this?" Ethan called as they ran. "There should be an interface designed for the blood sigil," Alastria replied, her eyes scanning the gate structure. They reached the base of the device just as several cult soldiers closed in. Ethan grabbed a fallen weapon and provided covering fire, allowing Alastria to examine the gate more closely. Its surface was inscribed with symbols similar to those on her arm, and at its center was a depression that matched the shape of her blood sigil exactly. "Here," she called to Ethan. "I need you right now." As he backed toward her, still firing to keep the cultists at bay, the high priest himself advanced, seemingly unaffected by the shots that struck his ceremonial armor. "You cannot stop the purification," the priest declared. "Zetria will be cleansed of all foreign corruption, beginning with you, human." "This corruption is what your ancestors welcomed," Alastria shouted back. "They made a pact for mutual protection, not isolation." The priest raised his staff, energy gathering at its tip. Lies perpetuated by the aristocracy to justify their betrayal of pure Zetrian blood. Ethan reached Alastria's side as the priest discharged his weapon. Instinctively, Ethan shoved her aside, taking the brunt of the blast across his shoulder and chest. He collapsed against the gate's interface, blood spilling onto its surface. "Ethan!" Alastria cried, kneeling beside him. His wound was severe, but he was still conscious. "Finish it," he urged through gritted teeth. With determination, Alastria pressed her marked arm against the interface, where Ethan's blood had already made contact. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The blood sigil flared with blinding light that spread through the entire gate structure. The pulsing energy that had been building suddenly shifted frequency, changing from an angry red to a harmonic blue. The high priest howled in rage, charging toward them with his staff raised for a killing blow. But before he could reach them, the gate's energy field expanded, enveloping him and his followers. When the light receded, they stood frozen, as if time itself had stopped for them. Throughout the chamber, the violent tremor subsided, replaced by a gentle hum as the ancient technology recalibrated itself. Above, the structural integrity of the drifting city seemed to stabilize, the alarming creaks and groans fading to silence. Alastria helped Ethan sit up, examining his wound. The energy blast had burned through his clothing, leaving a severe but cauterized injury across his upper torso. "Did it work?" he asked weakly. Before she could answer, a holographic projection emanated from the gate, a figure that resembled an ancient Zetrian, its form translucent and shimmering. "Protocol restoration complete," The figure announced in an archaic dialect that Alastria somehow understood. Genetic verification accepted. Alliance renewal confirmed. Extinction protocol deactivated. The projection turned to face them directly. Guardianship transfers to current sigil bearer and chosen bondmate. Gate functions now accessible to authorized genetic signatures only. With that pronouncement, the hologram dissolved, and the gate's pulsating energy settled into a stable, gentle glow. "I think that's a yes," Alastria told Ethan, helping him to his feet as Lennox and the remaining resistance fighters approached, expressions of awe on their faces. In the aftermath, the truth spread quickly throughout Zetria. The cult of Shera's remaining forces were apprehended or scattered. House Aram faced a reckoning as their centuries of manipulation came to light, though Tark argued, not without merit, that their actions had ultimately preserved Zetrian independence. Alastria and Ethan's genetic bonding, while not a formal marriage by either Zetrian or human standards, had fundamentally altered their relationship. The Gate had recognized them as partners in guardianship, a connection more profound than any political arrangement. 2 weeks after the events at the Drifting City, they stood on a viewing platform overlooking Zetria's capital. The cityscape glittered in the light of the setting twin suns, a picture of restored stability. "Earth's Council is pressuring me to return," Ethan said, his injured shoulder now healing beneath a regenerative bandage. "They want a full report on what happened, and why their diplomatic marriage turned into an interplanetary incident." "And what will you tell them?" Alastria asked. "The truth, that the marriage they arranged as a political maneuver turned out to be part of something much older and more important." He turned to face her. "But I'm not sure what happens next. According to that hologram, we're now co-guardians of an ancient planetary defense system. I don't think that's covered in standard diplomatic protocols." Alastria smiled slightly. "The aristocratic council is equally confused. Half of them want to exile me for exposing their secrets. The other half want to elevate me for saving the planet." "And what do you want?" Ethan asked softly. She considered the question seriously. "I wanted freedom, the chance to make my own choices." She looked out at the horizon, where the drifting city was now visible, restored to stable flight. "I never expected that freedom would come with such responsibility." "We could share that responsibility," Ethan suggested. "Earth and Zetria both need people who understand the truth of your world's history. Real diplomats, not political pawns." "Are you proposing a genuine alliance this time?" Alastria asked, a hint of warmth in her voice. "I'm proposing we figure out together," he replied. "Neither of us wanted this marriage, but we chose to bond our blood to save your world. That has to count for something." Alastria's blood sigil pulsed gently, as if responding to his words. "Yes," she agreed, "it does." As the last light of the twin suns faded, casting the city in the ethereal glow of twilight, Alastria reached for Ethan's hand. Their fingers intertwined, different in form and origin, yet joined by choice rather than coercion. Whatever came next would be their decision, together. In the distance, the ancient drifting city hovered like a guardian, its silhouette a reminder that protection didn't have to mean control, that bonds freely chosen were stronger than those forced by tradition or fear, and that sometimes salvation came from the most unexpected places, even from species once considered primitive and unworthy. "For better or worse," Alastria murmured, echoing Ethan's earlier words. He smiled, tightening his grip on her hand. "I think we're past the worst part." Above them, stars emerged in Zetria's night sky. Some of them world Alastria had once dreamed of visiting. Perhaps now, with the right partner, those dreams might still come true. "So," she said, turning to face the future, "shall we begin?"